Welcome to the Museum of Capitalism. Thank you for selecting our automated guided tour. Please follow along with the audio as you hear it. Please note, this guide uses dated capitalist terms. Please see our handy reference guide for any definitions you may be unfamiliar with. The fast fashion exhibit discusses the inconsistencies of the consumption system. Under capitalism, consumers were expected to purchase new items regularly to align with changing fashion trends. Retailers and consumers were both aware that what was in style would change quickly and that fashion is inherently cyclical, but they maintained the ownership model nonetheless. Fast fashion sought to stay current with fashion trends through cheap production practices, including unsustainable materials, abusive labor practices, and poor overall quality. The plus-size exhibit demonstrates quite clearly that, so long as profit was attainable, a company truly cares little about their consumers. A plus-size retailer manufactured goods particularly for clientele of uncommonly large size, who were frequently well over a healthy weight. Plus-size retailers preyed on this narrow market, producing garments that fit people who average garments would not fit. This niche enabled plus-size retailers to virtually isolate their clientele and limit the locations they could purchase adequate clothing, and furthermore, promoted body positivity for those who were well beyond a healthy weight. The Intimates exhibit discusses the commoditization of sexuality under capitalism. Ultimately, even extremely personal topics were generalized and put on display as a way to make money. This typology disproportionately impacted women, as it generated a series of standards by which female attractiveness could be judged, as well as putting a high price tag on intimate garments that were deemed necessary parts of the capitalist sexual experience. The Museum of Capitalism felt it inappropriate to represent this exhibit exactly as it would have been, so it has been censored to maintain the modesty of the shop. The fast fashion furniture showroom exhibit displays a fairly regular furniture layout from this time. While the furniture is perhaps comparable to what is used today, this showroom displays the wastefulness of these archaic practices. The display set shown would be used to let customers visualize how the furniture would look in their homes. However, the display set itself would not be for sale. Customers were only allowed to purchase identical copies of any given piece, while the original remained for the reference of potential future customers. Because the customers owned the furniture, they would need to discard their old furniture to be able to purchase new furniture, creating tremendous waste and limiting the practicality of any given room. The empty exhibit questions the heart of the classical capitalist system: supply and demand, market adaptation, market capacity, etc. These empty shops, a staple in any capitalist shopping mall, promptly discarded any ideas of the perfection of the capitalist system. This spot was once a stable source of income for the shopping mall, but now it is merely a resource drain. These locations were presumably once occupied by a shop or service. However, for one reason or another, the former tenant chose to leave the mall, and the spot is still unfilled. This fact demonstrates that even the most predatory of organizations, the shopping mall, was itself being consumed by the capitalist machine. Here is the gift shop, where you may complete simulated capitalist purchases to receive what capitalists would call souvenirs. Please note that these souvenirs must be returned upon exiting the museum. The Baubles exhibit discusses the asymmetrical relationship between a retailer and a consumer. During the time of capitalism, the supply of raw materials, such as diamonds, were restricted not by actual availability, but by the amount put up for sale at any given time. By controlling the amount available for purchase, the cost of so-called precious gems could be inflated to wrest more hard-earned resources from individuals. Further, many of these objects were peddled through the establishment of cultural rituals in which a bauble was necessary. Moreover, despite the vendors' reliance on consumers, the vendors ultimately distrusted the consumers, installing complex and expensive security systems. The Curio Shop exhibit is a monument to capitalistic accumulation. Under the capitalist system, ownership had an adversarial relationship with the continued development of markets. As a result, goods were specifically built to become unusable after a period of time so that consumers would have to purchase new goods. Beyond that, marketing strategies encouraged consumers to constantly purchase more objects, creating a culture of waste and accumulation. In this exhibit, you will find no frivolity hiding the true nature of the objects being sold. Capitalism deals only in destruction, waste, and greed. The Salon and Spa Exhibit displays how the mall and capitalism catered to social normality and enforced societal norms which encouraged division between societal groups. Salons and spas were places of traditional femininity, and it was seen as unmasculine to participate. Capitalism enforced societal norms through advertising, brand identities, and business practices. The salon and spa also frequently employed exploitative labor practices, hiring semi-skilled laborers and paying them poorly. These labor practices frequently became associated with racial stereotypes. The Alterations Exhibit seeks to provide a narrow link in the accumulation chain. Traditionally, a consumer must purchase a clothing item from a different vendor to have any use for the alteration location. The clothing item is produced in a generic form where it will fit the average categories of humans, such that if a person falls outside the range of average body types, they must pay more to find clothing that will fit properly. The single-faceted nature of the Alterations Exhibit shows that the theory that capitalism seeks to optimize systems is wholly false. In reality, capitalism is a way to extract as much wealth as possible from as many people as possible, creating convoluted systems with unnecessary steps. The Beau Monde exhibit further discusses the problems related to consumption and fashion. While high-fashion products were frequently made with higher quality materials, many companies still exploited negative labor practices and ultimately encouraged unsustainable cycles of consumption and destruction. While the high-fashion exhibit does recognize the artistry involved in fashion design and the seasonal variety it produces for society, capitalistic fashion practices were unsustainable and frequently required government protections to prevent the theft of intellectual properties. The Music Retailer exhibit details how capitalism was able to corrupt even positive aspects of culture. As music was commoditized, it became formulaic and generalized so that a given record would sell more copies given the same startup capital. Moreover, music was sold in wasteful packaging in physical formats, making an ephemeral concept manifest such that its quantities could be controlled and limited. Moreover, music was marketed like any other object, meaning more wealthy music producers were able to make songs more successful simply through forced exposure rather than true quality. The prescription eyewear exhibit highlights the cruelty of the healthcare system under classical capitalism. Optic surgery was available, but it used to be highly expensive and invasive. Alternatively, corrective lenses were used. These came in the form of either eyeglasses or small plastic lenses that contacted the eye directly, that would need to be worn at all times. These corrective lenses were very expensive, and in the case of the direct contact elements, disposable, requiring frequent and regular replacement. Under the classical capitalist system, those with vision problems had to pay to become fully functioning members of society, highlighting but one of the many dangerous inequalities of the capitalist system. The MacLeod exhibit demonstrates clearly how capitalism exploited the social norms it enforced. Here, citizens, primarily women, were socially pressured into purchasing expensive and disposable cosmetic aids that would be applied to the face to help them appear to conform to beauty standards. In addition to reaping the fruits of social pressure, some of these locations played to further gender stereotypes, providing scented body oils, lotions, and other novelty toiletries, intended to provide a more pleasant grooming experience. These products were sold at a price well above that of non-novelty grooming aids. The digital game retailer exhibit is an anachronistic self-contradiction from an era of inconsistent technology. While the onset of digital games was revolutionary, and these games still provide a positive pastime, game stores used predatory sales and purchasing tactics to profit off of seasonal changes in the gaming market. The concept of supply and demand enabled classical capitalists to manipulate their consumers and profit off the ownership system and to capitalize on marginal improvements in technology. Some digital game producers even released the same game several times with only minimal changes, sometimes only graphical changes, and frequently at an increased price. The National Cuisine exhibits are a scathing indictment of the dangers of brand marketing. Because of the free market, consumers were allowed to choose not only which products they would purchase, but where they would purchase those products from. This created a system where countless retailers would attempt to sell one object better than the other sellers of that object, or in a more attractive way. This resulted in the phenomena known as brand marketing. In brand marketing, a retailer would establish a brand identity, a cohesive appearance for products and sales locations to be more attractive and recognizable to potential and repeat customers. Here, the brand adopted is that of a national identity, but significantly stereotyped to be more recognizable to the consumer. The fast food exhibit shows some of the stranger tactics used to encourage consumption. Accessing a primal side of humanity and encouraging impulsiveness. This vice was critical in the sale of many types of objects, and perhaps none more than fast food. Fast food was produced cheaply and quickly, giving consumers a tempting alternative to homemade food or sit-down dining establishments. Further, these dining establishments made food that was particularly damaging to human health, meaning the convenience needed to be weighed against the risks. These dining establishments also employed unskilled laborers at a very low wage rate, frequently overworking laborers who did not make enough money. The coffee exhibit seeks to provide visitors with a personal experience related to the evils of capitalism. Within the exhibit, visitors may complete a simulated purchase and receive a sample of a substitute coffee beverage. In the age of capitalism, coffee was a bitter drink made from a bean, known for its ability to give energy. Under the tyranny of capitalism, the product was allowed to be mass-produced by unskilled farmers who grew coffee beans in wholly unsustainable ways, ultimately causing the extinction of the crop. The Museum of Capitalism provides visitors the opportunity to taste the beverage as a case in point, demonstrating the destructive nature of capitalism. The snacks exhibit highlights how capitalist corporations manipulated consumers through marketing. So-called impulse purchases were frequently the result of seductive, conscious, and subliminal marketing, and perhaps no vendor relies more on impulse purchases than snack shops. Snack shops provided unhealthy, wholly unnecessary, yet enticing foods, intended to be eaten between meals. These useless foods frequently also came in wasteful packaging decorated with various brand labels. Snack shops, as centers of impulse purchasing, found a comfortable home in the shopping mall where hordes of consumers make for easy prey. The Communal Workspace exhibit is a keen reminder of the deplorable working conditions of humans in the capitalist era. Even after the mechanization of most manual labor jobs, humans continued to labor in mentally taxing jobs, stuck in confining cubicles, editing and entering data into digital computation machines. In these offices, many humans developed debilitating joint conditions. The communal workspace at the mall is a particularly disturbing variation of the conventional office. Those who would have worked here actually paid for the honor to do so, displaying the greed of the capitalist system and its exploitation of the common worker. The Footwear exhibit furthers the discussion of destructive and exploitative practices associated with the fast fashion industry. Footwear was produced quickly, cheaply, and without regard for its impact. The footwear industry partnered closely with commercial athletics to help market their wares to fans of particular athletes, associating certain brands with certain sports or public figures. The footwear industry additionally highlights the way a capitalist society encouraged conformity to body standards. Outside of a certain average range, shoes were priced at a higher rate, meaning adequate clothing would be more expensive for someone above or below average body types. The Gymnasium Exhibit examines the bizarre capitalist social rituals surrounding wellness. While these facilities did use an efficient subscription system, ultimately these gyms relied heavily on clientele who purchased a membership but did not use it. Moreover, the equipment within demonstrates the ability to generate market niches by narrowing the scope of specialization. More and more equipment performed fewer functions, meaning gyms would need to purchase more equipment to provide the same amenities. This location additionally represents the social pressures present under capitalism. Through capitalist marketing, norms are established that ostracize certain populations. The gym is a place where these social pressures were at their highest. The Sports Facility Exhibit discusses the good-intentioned failure of capitalist sports entertainment. While sports are a healthy pastime, the amount of space wasted by a sports field is absurd and costly. This wide-open space can only garner so much entertainment, and for its size, it is an inefficiency unmatched. Additionally, these fields represent the commoditization of entertainment. The gullible consumers who participated in these sporting activities paid significantly for the privilege to do so. Under capitalism, the working class would need to pay not just to live, but to have recreation. The County Services Exhibit stands a reminder of how corrupt the government used to be under classical capitalism, ultimately becoming a brand like any other and vying for the precious dollars required to maintain state programs through the systems of economic competition. On the menus in this exhibit, you will see various ways federal, state, or county governments manipulated the capitalist system to take money from its citizens. Ahead, you will notice the trappings of an overbearing bureaucracy, long lines, overt surveillance, and abundance of intentional systemic entrapments intended to help the government produce continual income from the people it is meant to protect. The Technology Exhibit displays the dangers and wastefulness of the technology culture that flourished under capitalism. Companies fought to legally protect minimally different objects so they could sell them to consumers for more money. Minor variations were promoted as major changes to sell more. Immense social pressures encouraged consumers to purchase new devices regularly or risk obsolescence, not in actuality, but in the eyes of the public. Moreover, the technology that was being reproduced and discarded annually required limited natural and synthetic resources, making the technology cycle extremely wasteful. The Technology Exhibit displays the lack of practical diversity in technological objects and critiques the social pressures in technological culture. The Event Planning Exhibit displays the external sourcing of even basic tasks as a way to earn resources in the capitalist system. This system is tragic for the customers and the workers involved. The workers themselves needed to find any niche by which they could differentiate themselves, something they could offer that no one else could. In some cases, that is just the time required to perform a task that anyone else could perform. This type of worker was valued lowest of any and paid incredibly poorly as a result. As for the consumer, they were socially pressured to externally source as many activities as possible. In this way, consumers could achieve a higher social standing and avoid being ostracized. The Cinema Exhibit puts on display the bizarre capitalist mechanisms responsible for the production of countless disparate videos intended for mass consumption. These films contain hidden messages intended to promote particular products and political ideologies through the use of a tactic called subliminal messaging. Furthermore, viewers would need to pay to watch these films. The cinema used marketing and social media to create social pressures for important films to coerce customers into watching the films, wherein they could be behaviorally reprogrammed to better fit the mass consumption society. Thank you for visiting the Museum of Capitalism. We hope you enjoyed your tour and will do your part to help our society in the daily fight against the evils of classical capitalism. Have a nice day.